Hello and welcome to Gus Codes. I am Gus, and in this session of xganso I'll be wrapping up the first stage of the UI transition to ECS architecture. The goal today is to finalize the remaining features and clean up the code, laying a solid foundation for the UI framework. Specifically, I'll be working on keyboard input handling, panels, and the render system improvements. I'll start by looking at changes in components and systems, and then you can follow along as I develop them. First up is keyboard input handling. To support this, I'll create a key down component with char and key attributes, extend the event converter system that transforms Pygame events into ECS components, and add a key down input handler system to process those events. On the widget side, I'll introduce a typable component with allowed characters, and I'll simplify the text input family widget, currently string and int, by merging them into a single one with a variable component. Next, I'll implement the panel element. I'll introduce the parent, relative rectangle, and frameable components, along with a relative to screen rectangle system. This addition will allow us to position widgets relative to each other, which is essential for creating panels. Finally, I'll improve and optimize the render system. I'll add a render layer component so widgets can be drawn on top of one another based on their priority. This is crucial for panels. Also, I'll roll back the earlier decision to split the render into multiple systems. Now I'll have a unified rendering system that uses renderable, highlightable, and labelable components to define how each widget should be drawn. To optimize performance, I'll add force redraw and need redraw components to avoid redrawing unchanged elements. Early results show a CPU usage drop from 17 to 12%, a nice improvement. Let's start coding. Unfortunately, we had a problem with the second part of our recording, starting from the panels and then the render optimization. So I'm gonna go through the commit changes and comment a little bit what we changed in each part. So the main widget is our starting point to test the widgets. We added a keyboard, a panel, and now all the widgets are relative to this panel. We also updated the systems, so the key down system, that's the new one to handle this event, the relative to rect that calculates what should be the screen position, and now we use the unified renderer system. We also removed the screen fill because now with the force redraw and need redraw, we don't need to draw all the frames. Moving on to the ECS elements. Here we added the accepted chars for the text input. So we have one option that has all the integer numbers and then one option that has text, so integer, and also letters and some special signs. We created a base widget that's a base for all the other elements, and this has all the components that are needed. We also have the option to have a parent or not, and this simplifies a lot the creation of the other elements. It's also important to notice that we also added some components like the highlightable or labelable all the elements, and we created the panel. Moving on to the keyboard input, we have one component that's the key down with the char and the key, and also we added a key enumerator for delete and enter, so the processing of these two keys would be easier to do. For the UI components, we added the parent that has an entity and the relative rectangle. So this is the same as the UI rect, but it's relative, so we have to add the parent. We also added a UI rect dirty that can be used in the future, but it is not yet. So this would recalculate the UI rect based on relative rect. We added a frame UI color, so if anything is frameable, so for instance the panel, then it will use this frame color. We merged the UI string and the UI int into the UI variable. Now it has a value and a variable type. And then we also added the UI render layer to make sure that widgets can be rendered on top of panels. We added some tags, typable and which accepted chars there are, frameable if you have a frame, force redraw and need redraw for rendering optimization. And then for rendering options we have renderable, that's the basic one, all the widgets should have this, so it draws the background. Highlightable draws usually the frame around when it's hovered or selected, and the labelable is it renders text. We moved the UI system to UI event system, and we added in the event converter system our Pygame keydown transformation, so it creates a new ECS component on the keyboard, and the handling is done in the end. So we have three types of handling: one for the enter, it will remove the focus if it was focused; one is the delete, that will remove the last character, or if it's any other key, it will see if it's accepted and then it will add it. And lastly, the renderer system we moved from UI system, so we split the event and renderer systems into two files. It seems to be a lot of changes, but it was only a move. So the first one that we did is the relative to rect. So if there is a relative and a parent, we take these values and then we add them, and then we create this new UI rect. We only do if it doesn't have a UI rect. Once it's calculated, it doesn't calculate anymore. And here is the unified UI renderer system. First we get all the entities and we insert them in a list with their layer, then we sort them by the layer, and then in this sorted order we will take the information, the rect and the colors. This is something interesting. We set the clip so nothing is drawn outside this rectangle, and then we do in parts. So first is the background, then if it has a highlightable we draw the highlight, and if it's labelable we draw the text. Important thing is that if it's a need to redraw we remove it, so it just redraws in one frame and then never again until the next update. And each of these methods is the same as the previous system, so we just simplified a little bit them. And the text as well we simplified a lot, because now we can move from one to the other type of component. In this session, we wrapped up the first stage of UI transition to the new ECS architecture. All the basic widgets and core functionalities are now in place, which means we are ready to move on to the next milestone, porting the map editor into the new architecture. That will involve redesigning and rebuilding the editor while taking inspiration from the current version. As a side note, it might seem like we're making a lot of changes without much visible impact. And that's true. Right now we are focused on building a strong foundation so that development can move forward smoothly. We're aiming to make smart architectural decisions early and minimize the technical debt, so we won't need major refactors down the line. Thank you for your time, and see you in the next session.